Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Welcome to the Aliyah Day. I hope you're doing well and being blessed. We are on YouTube Live just because I did not have time. I was running kind of behind this morning. Didn't have time to reset everything back to the original format or whatever. But it looks like this is working well, and I'm looking forward to being with you today. We're going to be talking about more about Rebecca, of course. That's what our Aliyah is about today. With respect to looking at the character of this matriarch, and also looking at kind of the scheme, if you will, of why or how rather Eleazar found her at the well. What was exactly he was looking for? What was the reason of his going to the well and asking the questions that he had asked, and so forth and so on. So we'll be looking at that as just as quickly as we can. Let me put a little marker there so I don't lose my place. There's so many different insights here. Looking today primarily at Mammal West, but I hope that you're having a great day. Hope everybody can hear me and see me and know me. And all of that. So welcome aboard to all of you. Let's say good morning to everybody as we jump into our Aliyah this morning. Boker Tov to you, Chris and Crystal. Guten Tag, Lantern Signals. Guten Morgen to you, Bearded Prey. Bonjour, Donna. Bonjour, Cara. And bonjour, Jubilee. Buenos dias, Sarah. You and Shane, hope you're doing great. Boker Tov to you, Joe and Kim Bement. I hope you're doing fantastic. Greg Kroon, guten Morgen to you. Top of the morning to you there, Yonina, who's formerly from Georgia. Good morning to Sonia and Robert. Boker Tov to you. Boker Tov, Ariella and Micaiah and Hepzibah. John, good morning. Good morning to you, Kim and Milka. Hope you and Daniel are doing great. Good morning, Yochanan and Jean. Doorkeepers, Greenridge, Boker Tov. Good morning, Thelma. Guten Morgen to you, Yosef, and top of the morning to you, Shmuel. Hope you're doing great. Good morning, Amy. Sorry, Amy. Good to see you this morning. And did I say good morning, Yosef? Good morning, Yosef. Baruch Hashem. May your blood pressure come into alignment there, Micaiah. Good morning, Andrew De Leon. By the way, in case you're wondering, the law of Moses is the Torah of God. You're welcome. Good morning, Yolanda, and good morning, Keturah. I say that this morning because lately it seems that one of the I call it gaslighting. I don't know if it's gaslighting in the strictly clinical term. Good morning again, Chris and Crystal. Good morning, Roy. Boker Tov. But I think from my psychological experience, as you know, I am a well-educated and trained, self-taught psychiatrist. So anyway, and as a result, I kind of get into the psychology of people. It seems to me that there is this kind of an awakening that's going on inside of Christianity. It's kind of the good news and the bad news. Let me start with the good news. The good news is there's an awakening going on. And Christians, for the first time ever, I think in large part to Lapid Judaism, but not solely limited to us, but to a large extent, they're for the first time ever, they're awakening to the realization that the law of God, the Torah, has not been abolished. It's not been done away with. I don't know. I've been alive for a little more than half a century now. I've never heard of anybody ever taking Paul to task as we do here at Lapid Judaism. I just have never seen it, never heard it. Maybe it's out there. I don't know. But this awakening is happening. And so what happens is that Christians realize that their theology is basically heretical. It's heresy. It's blasphemous. If you say that the law, the word of God, has been abolished in any way, shape, or form. We've gone over this and over this and over this. I know he didn't abolish the law; he fulfilled it. Well, do you keep it today? No. Why? Because he said because we don't have to do it anymore. Therefore, he abolished it for you. Okay, we can get through that semantic gaslighting game. So, in an effort to kind of make their theology, not heretical, that's something that people, really strive to do. I mean, if we find out that our theology is, instead of dealing with the root cause, which is Paul's false gospel, they have now started to develop a new line of defense. And that is the law of Moses and the Torah are not the same thing. No, I'm not kidding. You're like, oh, stop, Rabbi. Nobody is foolish enough to say that. It's true. No, it's been lately. It's like these, it's like there's a Rush Limbaugh used to refer to these as seminar callers, meaning that people get together in a seminar and form a defensive narrative. And then he would get these phone calls on his radio program. I miss Rush. But anyway, he would get these phone calls on his radio program and they were all pretty much the same. And he said, this is a seminar caller. So we don't get phone calls, but we get comments. And the comments have been coming in lately that the law of Moses and the Torah are not the same thing. And see, the reason why this is important to point out is because that's a defense mechanism. If the law of God and the Torah are not the same thing, then canceling the law of Moses, rather, the law of Moses and the Torah are not the same thing, then canceling the law of Moses is plausible. We didn't cancel God's law. We canceled the law of Moses, you see. But of course, it's not the same thing. Guten Tag to you, Levi. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Amana and Shoshana Brenner. So I just want to make a PSA, public service announcement, that the law of Moses, or as we say in French, Moses, and Torah are in fact the very same thing. Okay. Very same thing. Okay. Now, something else I want to say before we get into our insights here, just really quickly, something I was talking to Rebbe Scene about last night or yesterday, rather, whenever it was. Christianity, as you probably know, if you've studied Christian history, church history, Christianity has been historically very, very anti-Semitic. Okay. Remember that the Holocaust in Europe was run by Christians. I know that some Christians may hear me say that and say, what? But it's true. It's true. Europe was Christian. And so Christianity, but forget the Holocaust. You can just go into church history. Christianity is very, very anti-Semitic. But there was a period of time right after the forming of Israel from about, let's say 1950, 1948, 1950, until, I don't know, last year, that there was this window in which there were Christian Zionists. And a lot of Christians were pro-Israel, pro-Jew. They loved Israel. They were, they thought that the establishment of the land of Israel was a miracle. But what I've noticed here in the last year or so is that window is closing. And the Christians are reverting back to their traditional anti-Semitic stance. And I don't want to take the time to get into why I see that, but I just want to make you aware that, we Jews are going to be facing this just like we always have since Christianity was founded by the Roman Empire in the 5th century. That, it's just a sad reality. Now, I do believe that there is a remnant within the church that is going to come out of Babylon and embrace the true faith of the Messiah. But make no mistake that I do believe that Christianity is taking a dark turn and they're going back to their Vatican roots. And we're starting to see that. You're starting to see more and more Christians that are opposed to Jews, Judaism, and Israel And that kind of Christian Zionism is becoming out of vogue. And we're going to see more and more you're going to experience more and more anti-Semitism from Christianity. But you have to understand something. This is what Christianity is. That window, that 1948 to now window, was an anomaly. And I think personally, and this is the last thing I'll say before we get to our Ma'am Louise, I think that when Messianic so-called Judaism, which unfortunately, what was missing from Messianic Judaism was Judaism. When it became a thing, let's say 30, 40 years ago, I believe that that was the opportunity for the leaders of that movement to take Christians home to Jerusalem. But that's not what happened. Instead, Messianic Judaism just became another denomination of Christianity. And it became and is today extraordinarily Paulinian. And basically, they missed their chance. And so as a result, Messianic Judaism today has become basically irrelevant. Okay, completely irrelevant. And the church has just gone back to Rome. And I think it's very sad. But so it's kind of the good news of the good. Now, I do think this, and I said this is the last thing. Now it's the last thing. I do believe that now the remnant that comes out will be a much more stable and solid remnant. Whereas before you had people that kind of played footsie. They wanted Christianity with a kippah on, and that's what Messianic Judaism was. Messianic Judaism was nothing more than Christianity with a kippah and a Jewish flavor. They wanted a little bit of hummus with their pork roast. But I do believe now the people that come out of Babylon, that is the church, will be a lot more stable, a lot more committed as they see that. So anyway, I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but remember that I am the mayor of Realville, and I will always help you live in reality. Okay. So, all right. So let's look at this now. And see what we can find out about the nature and character of Rebecca, and then what Eleazar was looking for. I want to begin by reading this insight here that is talking about when Eleazar came to the well and he began his search. It says Eleazar chose hospitality for his omen. So if you think about it, Eleazar is looking for a wife for his master's son. And I think that all of us could sit around and say, well, if I'm going to look for a wife for Isaac, what qualities am I going to look for in that girl, in that woman? I don't say girl, girls are girls no matter what age you are. It doesn't matter. But anyway, that's beside the point. What would you look for in the lady, in the girl, in the woman, the female? Well, I don't know. A lot of us could probably come up with different things that different characteristics we might look for. But Eleazar chose hospitality, and this insight is, why did Eleazar choose hospitality for his omen, meaning his sign? It says this was because hospitality was one of Abraham's most prominent traits. So this gives us pause for just a moment as we think about something that's very interesting. Abraham is our father. He's the father of the Jews only, by the way. He's not the father of the Christians, and he's certainly not the father of the Arabs. Now, even though they claim him as father, but he's not. And Sarah is our mother. Okay. Now, if we think about Abraham as our father, what is his number one trait that we should be emulating? And the answer is, interestingly, hospitality, not faith. And we talked about the heresy and Paul. We talked about yesterday how Paul, I mean, to a lot of us Jews, Paul, it's like, was Paul even Jewish? I know we've had this conversation over and over again. And I know that a lot of non-Jews are like, yeah, he was definitely Jews. In fact, he was the Jew of Jews. He was so Jewish, he made Jews jealous. The only people who think that are non-Jews. God loved the God-fearers. God loved the non-Jews. We love you. We want to help you. But the only people who think that Paul was really a great Jew are people who aren't Jewish. Think about that for a moment. It's like a rhinestone cowboy in some place like New Jersey. The only person who thinks he's a great cowboy are people who have never seen a real cowboy, who aren't from Texas. And so when you look at Paul from the eyes of Jews, he doesn't even look Jewish. He doesn't sound Jewish. He doesn't sound even remotely intelligent. He doesn't sound, when I read Paul, I'm not reading somebody who even remotely sounds like a Torah master or a Torah scholar or a Pharisee. Now, I know you've been brainwashed to believe that he was the Pharisee of Pharisees. Well, I'm sorry. I don't see it. And no, it's not because, please don't. Well, you don't see it because you're spiritually blind. Oh, please stop. God, please stop. Stop. I don't see it because it's not there. But Paul told you that the greatest trait of Abraham was he had faith. That's faith in God. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. Was Abraham a man of faith? Sure. Yeah, sure. So are the demons. Demons are people of faith too, because demons believe. But anyway, I digress. The greatest trait of Abraham was hospitality. Now, if you think about this in context of Sodom and Gomorrah, why was Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed? Why? Well, a lot of people think it's because of homosexuality, but that wasn't really true. Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because they were the antithesis of hospitality. So what does this teach us? It teaches us that we need to be hospitable. We need to be welcoming. We need to be, we need to go out of our way to have open hearts and open doors, not open minds, open hearts and open doors to strangers. Notice I said not open minds. Abraham had open doors and open heart, but he didn't have an open mind. He wasn't there to let the pagans convince him about their paganism. He had open doors and he had an open heart, but he didn't have an open mind. An open mind, by the way, is just another way of saying is I want you to agree with me. Now, it says here that Abraham's house was always used to help others, and a day never passed without a guest. He therefore sought a wife for Isaac who also had this type of hospitable nature. He also wanted to choose a girl who was innocent and polite. To determine this, he said to himself that he would remain near the well waiting for the girls to draw water. To his request for water, some girls would rebuff him and say, here he's standing right by the well, but he's too lazy to take water for himself. Why should we go to all the trouble to fill our pitchers just to give him a drink? He's so lazy, he wants us to put the water in his mouth. This would be an expected reaction from a peasant girl. But if a girl gave him a drink and offered to water his camels, this would be a sign that she was kind and ready to help others, and that she was not too busy for a stranger. And so this is what, this is what Eleazar was looking for. Good morning, Leah, and good morning, David. Good to see you this morning. It says here, through this device, Eleazar was able to determine that Rebekah was extremely polite and also quite intelligent. She later explained why she had offered water to the camels. When she offered water to Eleazar, she was in a quandary as to what to do. What if this stranger had a serious contagious disease, such as leprosy or cholera? He had put the jug to his lips. Now all the water in it would be contaminated. How could she bring it home instead of pure well water? Since she was so close to the well, but had to ask for the water, it might be because he was ill and did not have the strength to climb down the stairs to the water. But if she were to spill it out, it would be an embarrassment to him, since it would appear that she could not stomach using water after he had tasted it. Okay. She immediately came up with an idea. She would offer to give his camels all the water they could drink, spilling the water into the trough. Still, she was concerned that he would demur and tell her that he had already watered his animals. The Torah therefore says that she quickly emptied her jug into the trough. Before Eleazar said a word, she had disposed of the water. Now, some say that her way out was that she emptied the jug in such a manner that it appeared that it had slipped from her hand. But in either case, Eleazar was so impressed with her modesty when she gave him the water, the Torah says she quickly lowered her jug to her hand and let him drink. Normally, she would carry the jug on her shoulder. However, if she let him drink from it while it was still on her shoulder, he would have had to stand very close to her and in close proximity. Therefore, she carried it in such a way to protect her modesty. And this was something else that Eleazar saw in her, which made him consider that this was the woman that had been, chosen for his master. Now I want to come back to this other insight here. Let me see if I can find it right quick. I had marked it and then I moved it, where it's talking about Eleazar coming to the well. Let me see. Where did I do with it? It's further back this way. Where did it go? Huh. Sorry, guys. I misplaced my insight. Now, here it is. So it says here, one may ask that if Eleazar was so intelligent and clever, a student of Abraham, why did he have to resort to the plan that he used, especially since it could have had disastrous results? He could have simply asked for Nahor's house and walked up to the door. So, that's an interesting point. Why did he go to the well and kind of go through all of this methodology when he could have looked in the phone book, actually? Every town back then had a phone book or phone booth. He could have just gone to the phone booth, looked at the phone book, looked up Nahor's house, and gone to Nahor's house and just said, "Hey, I'm here to see if you have any daughters." But he didn't do that. He decided to just go to the well. But it says here, there's two reasons why he did this. First, man has free will. It says it was always possible that Abraham's relatives would not have allowed a young girl to go away to a strange city where she didn't know anybody. He therefore wanted to be able to overcome their objections, to show them that Rebekah had been chosen by a divine omen. God had given a sign, and so therefore, how could they object? So that's why he didn't go look her up in the yellow pages. He decided to, instead of letting his fingers do the walking, he decided to let his legs do the walking and go to the well, and basically so that he could come to their family and say, "Look, I prayed, God answered, God showed me that this was the girl," and therefore they would say, "Well, how could we object? I mean, if it's God's will, it's God's will," which is basically exactly what they said. Said second, he was afraid that they would say, "Fine, there is nothing that we would like better than for our daughter to marry Isaac, but we do not want to send her with you." Okay. How would it look for a slave to bring our daughter to her bridegroom? If Isaac wants to marry her, let him come here. If he cannot come, let him send a distinguished person to fetch her. Now, if this had happened, Eleazar would not have been able to do Abraham's bidding. He therefore made this sign. When they saw that his prayers were immediately answered, they would not be able to refuse to let Rebekah go with him. Furthermore, it says if he had gone directly to Bethuel's house, they would have told him, this is a major decision. Let us think it over for a few days. Then we will give you an answer. Or they would have said, we agree to the match, but let us spend a few days with our daughter before we send her so far away. There would have been no way for Eleazar to pressure them not to delay. Obviously, one should not rush things, and patience is always a virtue. However, when Eleazar could represent a divine omen that Rebekah had been predestined for Isaac as the bride, he could pressure them into giving him an immediate answer and not to delay his mission. Okay, so these are the reasons why he went to the well, and he went through this ceremony as he did to try to find her, is because he was trying to make sure that there wouldn't be any reasonable objections to him taking her to be Isaac's bride straight away. Okay. What are some other things that he saw in Rebekah as well? Well, another insight here from Ram Loez, and I'm not sure if I had shared this when we were talking about Rebekah or not, but it says here in Ram Loez's commentary as well, this is to chapter 24, verses 15 and 16. He says, Rebekah was such a saint that her parents had never even tried to make a match for her. Normally, when there is a daughter in the family, her parents are constantly trying to match her up. But Rebekah was so virtuous that none of the immoral people in the area wanted to have anything to do with her. Now, isn't that interesting? It's also understandable. I mean, I can see that. You can see, I think some of you could probably say, yeah, I could see where people are so immoral that they don't want a virtuous person. So nobody wanted to match up with Rebekah because everybody thought she was too moral. She was too holy. Okay. So it says, this is what the Torah means when it says no man had known her. It obviously does not mean that she had, it obviously does not mean that she had not had relations with any man, as a similar expression implied with regard to Lot's daughters. In the case of a virtuous girl like Rebekah, this would have been quite obvious. It means rather that no man had even become acquainted with Rebekah for the purpose of marriage. She didn't have any offers. Nobody wanted to get to know her because she wasn't immoral enough. Some say that the Torah is telling us something about Eleazar's virtue. Although he was speaking to Rebekah, he did not even lift his eyes to glance at her. Literally, the verse says, a man did not know her. That means the man in question was Eleazar, but he himself took pains to speak with her in a modest manner, which, of course, is a Jewish virtue for men to speak to women in a modest way, and being very guarded in the way in which we communicate with women. It says the Torah is also telling us something about the low moral standards of this area. In every generation, there are hidden saints of whom nothing is known. On high, they are very important, and are well recognized, even though they may be downtrodden here in this world below. It says we find a good example of this in the story of Ashmedai, which was introduced in chapter 1 of Vayera. On the road, when he was being brought to King Solomon, he saw a blind man wandering off the road, and he carefully led him back. When Solomon asked him why he had done it, Ashmedai replied, on high it was announced that this blind man is an absolute saint, and that anyone who did good for him would have a portion in the world to come. People, however, have no idea what a great person he is. This is recorded, by the way, in Gittin in the Talmud. The same was true of Rebekah. Her neighbors were so immoral that they could only look upon her as it says here, a sex object. Therefore, none of them knew what a saint she actually was. On high, however, her true nature was well known. It was recognized that she was destined to become one of the matriarchs. The Torah thus says, no man knew her. That is to say, no man knew her true exalted nature. It's remarkable, isn't it? You think about it, that Rebecca is going to come. She's a at this juncture, she's a non-Jewish. You know, all the matriarchs were converts to Judaism. But at this juncture, she's not yet a Jew, but she's going to be the one who marries the first Jew, the one who really, in a sense, you could think about Isaac as someone who renewed the covenant. And it's a loose interpretation, to be sure, but if you think about Abraham, he was the one who was circumcised, right? He circumcised himself, and then he circumcised Ishmael. But the first one to be circumcised on the 8th day as a baby was, in fact, Isaac. And so you could say that Isaac was somebody who kind of renewed the covenant. And of course, he was a living sacrifice. That's why he couldn't ever leave the land of Israel. And so here Rebecca is going to be chosen to be the non-Jewish who's going to come and convert in order to marry the living sacrifice, the one who initiated the new covenant, if you will. It says Rebecca was Bethuel's daughter, a granddaughter of Abraham's brother, Nachor. Okay. So this would make Rebecca basically Abraham's great niece. Is that right? Great niece. So he's the granddaughter. So he's the daughter of the niece. I think so. Is that how you'd say it? The daughter of your niece is your great niece. Is that correct? Or am I missing I think feels like I'm missing something. I'm missing a generation there, but maybe not. In any case, this is going to be Abraham's niece, essentially, that he's marrying, and it's going to be Rebecca. Therefore, is going to be basically Isaac's cousin. You know, there are some states in the United States in which you can marry your cousin. I don't know if all states have that provision, but there are states in which you can marry your first cousin, and there are many countries in which this is the case, and it's not forbidden by Torah law either. So marrying a cousin is something that can be done. This was actually part of the movie, the series anyway, the drama, Stitzel. He ended up marrying his cousin, which again is not forbidden by Torah law, and is practiced in some countries and some states. I don't know if anybody knows whether or not all 50 states allow the marrying of a cousin. I don't know. Seems like there's some that do not, but I do not know. So Rebecca was Bethuel's daughter, a granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nachor. She thus came from a very wealthy family. She had many servants and did not normally go out to draw the water. On this day, however, Providence saw to it that she was the one who went out to draw water along with all the other girls. The spring was in a small depression. All the girls who came to draw had to climb down the stairs to the water. When Rebecca arrived, however, water began to gush forth of the spring, filling up the entire depression, and it actually rose up to greet her. She was immediately able to fill her jug and head towards home. So, so here, this is another insight that I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but when Rebecca came to the well, the water rose up to meet her. Okay. So when the Torah says the girl went down, it does not mean that she climbed down to the spring. Rather, it means that she had to walk downhill from her house since it was on a rise. So her house was, elevated. It says the servant ran towards her and said, "Please let me sip a little water from your jug." She said, "Drink, my lord." And she quickly lowered her jug to her hand and let him drink. When he had finished drinking, she said, I will also draw water for your camels until they have drunk their fill. Okay. Says, when Eleazar saw that the water rose up to prevent her from going to the trouble to climb down to the stairs, he therefore realized that this girl was an unusual saint. He quickly ran to her and asked her for a sip of water from her jug. She told him to drink and also offered water to her camels. She quickly emptied her jug into the trough and ran to the well again to draw water. She thus drew for all his camels. Without waiting for a reply, it says here, she quickly drew water, or she quickly ran rather, and watered the camels. So that's the other thing about Rebecca. He didn't ask her to water the camels, but rather she just said, let me go ahead and water the camels. Now, it says the man gazed at her, remained silent, and wondered whether or not God had made his journey successful. Okay. It says the man stood silently contemplating the situation. He already knew that his own prayer had been answered, but he was not sure that she was one of Abraham's relatives. He observed her carefully, looking for some type of sign. Okay. So it goes on to say here, excuse me one second. So Sonia, did you said abolished in Connecticut? Are you saying that they used to allow marriage to cousins in Connecticut and now they do not? Or are you saying that it was prohibited and now they do? I'm just curious. Just curious. It says when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets weighing 10 gold shekels for her. He said, whose daughter are you? Please tell me if your father's house was a place for us to spend the night. Now, I don't know who it was, but recently somebody was asking a question to me. And basically the question had to do with women wearing nose rings back in the day. And I don't remember who asked, and I don't recall the context of exactly the conversation, but it seems like maybe the person was a little surprised because maybe they felt like a nose ring for a female might be unseemly, perhaps. I don't know. But in any case, evidently not so much. Nose rings were evidently a fashion item for ladies back at this time period. So note to self, a nose ring. I don't know how women feel about nose rings today. I don't know that it really much matters. I don't guess. But for what it's worth, a nose ring was evidently a piece of jewelry back in the day. And so there you go. So it says a nose ring was worn in the nose, very much like earrings are worn today. Okay, thank you, Ma'am Loez. Very well. It contained a jewel weighing 5 dramas, which is approximately 45 carats. That would be a heavy nose ring. 45 carats. I don't know that a lady would like to wear a 45 carat nose ring, but okay. Maybe some ladies would. You know what? Everybody has different tastes. So it says the 2 brackets that he gave, brackets. Sorry. The 2 bracelets that he gave her weighed 10 selaim, or approximately 120 drams, which is 6.8 troy ounces. Okay. Troy ounces. So these were heavy bracelets. So it was obviously for someone as wealthy as Abraham, these gifts were mere trifles. But in general, what the patriarch did was meant to be a sign for their descendants. Abraham had therefore carefully specified these gifts for their public value. It says here, the half shekel that the precious stone weighed symbolized the half shekel that each Jew would give for the census, from Exodus 38:26. The 2 bracelets symbolized the 2 stone tablets, which would be binding upon Rebekah's descendants, and the 10 shekels that they weighed would symbolize the 10 commandments, or the well, let me come back to that. These symbolize the 10 commandments. These gifts alluded to the fact that Rebekah's descendants would be the ones to receive the Torah. This also comes from Breshit Rabbah. Shmuel says, is a nose stud okay for a girl? Well, I would have to say yes, Shmuel. I don't have any reason why it would be forbidden halakhically. And if a woman can wear a nose ring, which is basically an earring for the nose, then I don't know why she couldn't wear a stud, because women wear studs in their ears. So there's no reason why a lady can't have a nose stud if she wants one. There's no, as far as I'm aware, there is no halakhic reason to forbid it. I will say, however, with this one caveat, and that is that halakhically speaking, if there's a particular custom that is prevalent amongst the idolaters, then a Jew shouldn't do it. Now, that doesn't apply to earrings or nose rings or nose studs or ear studs or bracelets or that type of thing. But it would apply, let's say hypothetically, if let's say that all the Gentile girls wore a red ruby nose stud. Let's just throw it out there. Let's say this was commonplace, okay? Then halakhically speaking, a Jewess should not wear a red ruby nose stud. I'm just using that hypothetically, okay? That type of thing. So there's kind of a general rule that would be the case. Now, going back to this 10 Commandments statement, I know that you know this already. Most of you do, but some of you may not. And that is that the 10 Commandments are not really commandments. The Hebrew, it states that they're the 10 statements. Now, very often we say 10 Commandments, as we read here in this literature, which is Orthodox Jewish. We read it in other places. It's always referred to as the 10 Commandments. But I just want to point out that it's not 10 Commandments, it's 10 statements. Now, this is important for those of you who are watching who are Christians. Maybe you're new to this. That people say, well, the only commandments that are from God are the 10 Commandments, the rest are not. And of course, that's a lie. It's totally false, totally bogus. But it's helpful to know maybe that the 10 Commandments are 10 statements. It's like saying there are 10 categories. Okay. An example from would be from like the penal code. If you've ever read the penal code, you'll notice there are categories. There's like categories for murder. Like, let's just say murder, right? That's just a general category. Theft, assault, I don't know. What's another category? Another, auto theft or whatever. Those are categories. And underneath those categories are the specific laws. Okay. That's what the 10 Commandments are. The 10 Commandments are really 10 statements. There are 10 categories. And underneath those 10 categories are found all the other laws. So every other law of the 613 mitzvot, laws of the law of Moses, otherwise known as the Torah, otherwise known as the law of God, those laws fit under one of those 10 headings. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Now it goes on to say here, and we'll conclude with this, with the jewelry of Rebekah. Now all the ladies are looking at their jewelry and saying, should I go and get the nose ring? I don't know. So it says, some say that the nose ring itself weighed 5 drachma. Abraham did not want Rebekah to marry Isaac for his wealth, but for his wisdom and piety. And because the two would give rise to the nation itself, the nation of Israel itself. He therefore gave her a fairly modest gifts, indicating that she should marry Isaac even if he were poor. This teaches that a man should not marry a woman who has too strong a liking for jewelry and precious stones. A girl who pays more attention to her engagement ring than to the character of the man who gave her the ring to her is an unworthy bride. Sorry, ladies. So don't be too what's the word? Don't be too enamored with gems and jewelry, ladies. Don't be too enamored with the engagement ring, but rather think about the one that gave it to you. It says the Torah advises a girl not to seek a wealthy husband, but one who is pious, good-hearted, intelligent, and educated. Relying on Abraham's merit, Eleazar assumed that she would be suitable and gave her the gifts. Only then did he ask her about her family background. He also asked if he would be able to spend one night in her parents' home. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. It's been a blessing to be with you. May it be God's will that today be a day of great goodness and joy and blessing for you. I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow with God's help. Until then, may you have good news today and good fortune, and may be richly blessed. Please like this video and share it with all of your friends, and I will look forward to seeing you mañana. Bezrat Hashem.